Can I start? I guess I'm starting. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Mike Gershbein. I have a technology training company called Very Smart People. I teach technology to adults, and I've taught at your library a number of times. This is my first time on your YouTube channel. I've done a lot of virtual stuff over Zoom, and today we are talking about the mind-blowing world of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and what the heck is going on. And a word of I don't know if it's warning or just to keep you so you know what's going on. I teach technology. I want you to understand how this stuff works, the idea behind it. I may or may not end up making you rich with it. I'm not a Bitcoin evangelist. I'm not going to tell you go buy. As far as I'm concerned, it's a risk. There's a lot of kind of very weird stuff about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I think there's a lot of legitimacy behind it, and in the future of some of these, Bitcoin may be one, or other ones may come into it. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not assuming that I'm going to get rich off of this stuff. It's not really my goal here. My goal is to help you understand this world, understand what's going on, and you can hopefully make a decision to take the risk as to whether to buy cryptocurrency or use or invest or anything like that, or to walk away from it. I don't have the answers for this stuff. I'm just going to inform you, make you a little bit smarter. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go do a bunch of slides. And when I say cryptocurrency is weird, if you think cryptocurrency is weird, I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to argue that it's not. There's a lot of strange kind of. You got to twist your mind around it a little bit to kind of understand this world. But once again, hopefully we'll be able to do it now. A few kind of main points I want to get out there before I start. Point number one is Bitcoin. I keep talking about Bitcoin making you rich. Bitcoin is actually a currency. You see it in that it's called cryptocurrency. The idea behind Bitcoin is that you're going to go buy something with it. Maybe go to your corner market and buy some milk and some cheese and some cookies and pay for it with your Bitcoin. We don't see a lot of that happening right now, which may be a weakness. Arguably, it serves other purposes as well, but that's not really going on a whole lot. There was just a news item where somebody bought from Sotheby's a big diamond using cryptocurrency. They put it up for sale, and kind of as kind of a cute little thing about it to get people interested. They said, we'll accept Bitcoin. And I actually think they ended up taking another cryptocurrency rather than Bitcoin. But Tesla had said at one point they're going to accept it, and then they're not going to accept it. But we're not seeing a lot of places accept this cryptocurrency as a way of buying stuff, and that could be a weakness in it. But maybe that'll change. Second point that I want to get across is that there's no actual physical form of Bitcoin. You're not pulling out your wallet, whipping out some Bitcoin, and paying for that gallon of milk with it. The easiest way to understand Bitcoin is that it's all links to a ledger. It's all links to a ledger of transactions. So if you've had any kind of accounting experience, you know that business or personal use Quicken ledger of transactions, money comes in, money comes out. That's what Bitcoin is. It's a long ledger all the way back over 10 years old, where some Bitcoin was created, passed along to other people. Eventually that ended up with you. Okay, so when we say that you own 0.367 Bitcoin, something like that, then all that is pointing to a ledger of transactions showing at some point you got this 3.376 Bitcoin, whatever it is. Now, Bitcoin itself, the way that Bitcoin is kind of produced and the way that people give it to each other is all based on some software. All the rules that were kind of behind Bitcoin were built into the software that somebody created 11 or 12 years ago, put out on the internet, put out on a bulletin board and said, hey, here's this software that you guys can use to create Bitcoin, and you can use it as a currency. So the rules behind it were built into that, just like the rules of how Microsoft Word works, or any other program out there. The rules are built into that software that was put out there. Why do these rules exist? Because whoever built the software decided that that's how it should run, and maybe there were good reasons for it. What we're seeing is a lot of people see over the years, like a lot of kind of first runs. People have had other goes at competitors that maybe work better. So there are a lot of Bitcoin competitors, which we'll talk about in a second. But Bitcoin was the first of these cryptocurrencies, and this is how they decided to do it. So a lot of stuff that I'll be talking about, you may be wondering, why did they make this decision? And for some of it, the answer is we don't know why they made the decision, but they made it and they built it into the software, and that's how it is. Now, the kind of hardest thing to kind of wrap your mind around, I think, as far as the value of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, is that really the value of Bitcoin is based on absolutely nothing. Okay, so when you talk about this Bitcoin, one Bitcoin was worth what, right? About $33,000 right now. 3 months ago, it was worth $60,000. A year ago, it was worth $9,000. I'll talk a little bit about these price fluctuations, but there's nothing kind of tying it to a price. It's entirely worth what people are willing to buy and sell it for. That's it. You know, when we're talking about like the price of gold, in theory, there's gold. I mean, there's a bar that you can melt down and make a watch out of it, all this stuff. There's nothing tied to the value of this currency other than what people are willing to pay for it. And that makes some people uneasy. It is kind of a new way of thinking about currency, whether you feel kind of comforted by that or nervous by it. You know, that's going to be up to you. So cryptocurrency uses encryption, and this is the general term for all these types of currencies, because like I said, there are competitors to Bitcoin, which I'll talk about in a second. Uses encryption to come up with a very safe way to regulate this generation and transfer of virtual currency, money to be spent, even though people aren't necessarily spending it. So we've got software that uses encryption. It's very, very safe. It's essentially unhackable. We hear about hacks, and I'll talk about where they exist, but they don't exist kind of in this core software that's only purpose is to generate this currency and make it so that you can transfer this currency between people. So as I keep hinting at, there are other types of cryptocurrency out there. So basically the terms we use are Bitcoin, which is number one. It was the first one of these to come around. Altcoins, which is everything that's not Bitcoin. Something's either a Bitcoin or it's an altcoin. Tokens is another word that you use. These are kind of cryptocurrency that serves a specific purpose. It's kind of tied to a specific purpose. For all intents and purposes, it's similar term to altcoins. It's a specific type of not Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrency. So there are a lot of these out there right now. And frankly, I just saw the numbers yesterday. You had invested in Bitcoin at the beginning of the year and invested in the S&P 500. S&P 500 is beating Bitcoin for the year. Not necessarily the case with some of these other currencies. Dogecoin, which maybe you've heard of, which was created kind of as a joke. That one has beat the S&P 500, I think, just by a little this year. So there are certainly a lot of these out there. There's over 5,900 out there. The total market cap of these cryptocurrencies is about $1.3 trillion right now. This market cap kind of goes up and goes down depending on the value of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is about half of what it was a few months ago. Interesting thing about this, though, so the market cap is over $1.3 trillion. Bitcoin is about over $600 billion. So it's about half of that. Bitcoin used to, a year ago, be about 80% of the market cap of all of these cryptocurrencies that are out there. So a lot of more and more of these keep getting created, and the value of them overall keeps increasing. So Bitcoin itself is a smaller and smaller part of the market that's out there. Number two, as far as market share, is Ethereum, which has been around a long, long time. It's similar to Bitcoin in a lot of ways, but also different from Bitcoin in a lot of ways, in that it's actually, the software behind it is actually very different. It can create cryptocurrency that's Ether, which is the number two cryptocurrency, which is market cap of, it's about a third of the market cap of Bitcoin. So it's not quite there, but it's increasing its value as far as market cap. So you may have made more money investing in Ether than in other cryptocurrencies. I don't know offhand, but also the software behind it is used to create other tokens. So even though it's similar to Bitcoin, Bitcoin's only purpose is to create Bitcoin, whereas the software behind Ethereum is used for a lot of the other cryptocurrencies that are out there. So it is similar but different. Bitcoin Cash is another one that's out there. It was kind of a spin-off of Bitcoin in that people saw some issues with the software behind Bitcoin. And so they kind of took it, they gave people the choice to either keep their cryptocurrency as Bitcoin or to break off and go into Bitcoin Cash. That's an example of if people saw a fix to certain issues with the software, and so they gave people an alternative to go with their cryptocurrency. Litecoin is quite an old one. It's been around a long time. It's kind of referred to as the silver to Bitcoin's gold. Ripple is one that's been around for a while that a lot of companies have looked at using. Same thing with Cardano. Tether is kind of an interesting one that's called what's called a stable coin, in that the value of Tether is tied to $1. So there's, in theory, there's supposed to be the cash to back up these Tether coins. Each one is going to be worth $1. So we hear about stable coins in general that don't have, this up and down of Bitcoin. They're always right around $1. Polkadot is another one that's a more recent one. Polkadot, I think, has its own technology behind it, as does Ripple, as kind of a competitor to Ethereum and Bitcoin. I mean, essentially, a lot of the currencies that are out there are from Ethereum, but there are other people coming up with different types of cryptocurrency that run on different software that they see as being better versions than Bitcoin or Ethereum. So let me show you, and then Dogecoin, which some of you may have seen that in the news, was kind of created as a joke. And it's been because of a lot of these people online kind of pushing it and other reasons, it's really gained a lot in value. But that is kind of one of those things that kind of makes you a little bit, or makes me a little bit nervous about cryptocurrency, is people are buying and selling Dogecoin as kind of a joke, and its value is increased. It doesn't do a whole lot. So I'm not going to tell you not to buy it or to buy it, but it is just one of those things where there's not a lot of rationale behind its increase besides people having fun. I mean, maybe some people would argue with me about that, but I guess they can do their own class. So let me show you what this world looks like. I'm going to go to a website. This lists most of the cryptocurrencies that are out there. If you wanted to start a cryptocurrency, you could and get it listed. So right now there's, like I said, almost 6,000 cryptocurrencies. Every time I do this class, this number goes up. It wasn't long ago that it was 5,000, the total market cap, things like that. And then at the top, as far as market cap, we see Bitcoin worth right around $33,000. It's amazing. I just kind of looked up 5 minutes ago, it was under $33,000, and now it's up to $33,000. And I'd mentioned Ethereum as being number 2. Tether, which is tied to the value of $1, so you can see that the price is always right around $1. And then we get to some of the other big ones like Cardano, XRP, our friend Dogecoin, which is now the number 7 most valued currency out there. Polkadot, I mentioned. Litecoin is kind of gone down. And then if you go way down this list, you find all kinds of wacky coins. And you know what? Some of these coins, some of these cryptocurrencies, if you had invested in them a year ago, 2 years ago, if you had invested in My Neighbor Alice, maybe, oh, look at that, whatever, it's up 33%. I didn't catch what that one was for the, over the last week. So, you had bought My Neighbor Alice cryptocurrency. Maybe it's got some great reason to exist, and maybe you made a lot of money this week. The point is, there's thousands of these out there. Maybe some of these will make you some money. Maybe some of them serve a really interesting purpose. We can talk more about most of these a little bit later, the reasons that they exist. But it's certainly a big world out there right now for those of you who are interested in looking at it beyond Bitcoin. So why does, I actually just saw a letter to the Tribune a couple days ago where somebody was saying, there are all these problems with Bitcoin. Why use it in the first place? Why fix something that ain't broken? So anyway, I'll tell you why Bitcoin was created in the first place. And keep in mind that Bitcoin, its creation was done by a bunch of computer geeks in a garage or a basement somewhere 11, 12 years ago. I'm guessing that they probably didn't know that everybody would be talking about it 10 years down the line. It would be up to $60,000 of Bitcoin or anything like that. They did it. They were kind of anarchists looking to get around the financial system. You know, they didn't like, this was after the financial crisis, and they didn't like the idea of central banks regulating currency, governments, you know, managing inflation, all this type of stuff. They wanted a currency that wasn't, that didn't have a central group kind of determining how much was created, how it was valued, things like that. You know, once again, kind of an anarchic view. And there isn't a group regulating Bitcoin right now. Some of the other ones, there are groups doing it, but Bitcoin, there's no group regulating it. There are kind of discussion groups, and there are ways of making changes to the software, but they're very kind of hands-off. Everybody has to adapt them. There's no group saying this is how it works. It was that software that was unleashed. Now, it's a global solution. So if you need to send money, another thing I was reading an article about where some, I forgot the town, Central America or something like that, all these kind of businesses would lose people to a day of work because they would have to ride their horses to some faraway town in order to find the only bank or currency exchange in the area, and then they would deposit their money there, maybe send it to family overseas, which costs money. So Bitcoin, all that requires that you have is a phone. You know, people don't have banks everywhere. It's not Chicago where you've got 10 branches every block. People don't necessarily have currency exchanges, or if they do, they're expensive to use. What they have are they have phones. They don't even necessarily have computers, but they have phones that allow them to have access to the internet. And you want to send money to a person across the world, you can easily do that just with that phone. Now, the next 2 points are an interesting kind of pair of things because they almost seem contradictory, which is, first of all, it is a private way of sending money, meaning that unlike a credit card, which can be tracked back to a credit card to a person, with cryptocurrency, you don't know the person on either end of the transaction unless they identify themselves. They're identified, though, with a long group of letters and numbers. It's called the public key. I'll be talking about that in a second, but that's it. The long group of letters and numbers aren't tied to a person. So private transaction. On the other hand, a lot of the kind of safety behind Bitcoin is that all the transactions are transparent. Basically, I mentioned that ledger of transactions all the way back to day one, people sending money to each other, all of those transactions are transparent. Now, the person on each end isn't necessarily identified because that's private, but all the transactions are there. So if somebody was to try to cheat cheat by changing the transactions, everybody has a copy of all the transactions back to the beginning of time. It's what's called the blockchain, is all those transactions. I'll be talking more about the blockchain later, but once again, that is all the transactions back to the beginning of time. Now, it is very inexpensive to send money through using something like Bitcoin. I have a question mark there because one of the challenges we find with Bitcoin, with both the cost and the speed, is that various things can make it more expensive and can slow it down. And that's one of the problems some people see with Bitcoin, is based on various things. It can either get slower or it can get slower and more expensive. But there is a fee to send Bitcoin. It's very low fee, though. In theory, Bitcoin will be sent within 10 minutes. I'll talk about why that is later. But once again, that can slow down as well. And you say, I use my credit card and it's an instantaneous purchase. The money behind the credit card isn't transferred for a few days. And that's one of the issues banks have, is transactions, large financial transactions, credit cards and banks and things like that, they take a few days to accomplish. Whereas cryptocurrency ideally will take 10 minutes, potentially longer. It is an irreversible transaction. You can't, go and say you made a mistake and get your crypto back unless the person on the other end just agreed to send it to you. So there's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there right now that use some combination of these. And we're even hearing, I didn't mention this on the previous thing about that listed all the cryptocurrencies, but there are governments that are talking about doing this, either running a cryptocurrency, an official cryptocurrency, side by side with their regular currency, their paper currency or fiat currency. I've heard rumblings about the US, but that would be way off in the future. But some like El Salvador is talking about doing that. I'm guessing that not everything here would apply if you did an official government cryptocurrency. They wouldn't necessarily want the ledger of transactions to be public, for example. But we're seeing some combination of these in general with most of the cryptocurrencies. So a lot of you are probably wondering how you actually get the stuff in the first place. And one of the thing that you need for sure is what's called a Bitcoin wallet. And that's not something you're going to shove in your pocket. That's something that's going to sit on your phone or your computer, and it will have a link back to that ledger of transactions or the blockchain and tell you how much Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies you own. That is something you need definitely. Now, one of the things that exists outside of the actual software to create and facilitate exchange of cryptocurrencies is an exchange. And just like you go to another country, you need to exchange your dollars into yen or into euros, something like that. These exchanges are built to exchange your cash, your dollars into Bitcoin, or exchange your Bitcoin into one of the other cryptocurrencies, things like that. They charge a fee to do this. It's usually a percent or two. You link up your bank account to them, you send your dollars to the exchange, and then they change it into cryptocurrency. That's how most people are getting it. Now, there's certainly person-to-person transfer is easy to do. You decide you want to give me a certain amount of Bitcoin because you're buying a car from me and I accept Bitcoin, something like that. Both of us would just need a wallet, software wallet on our phone or on our computer. We would give each other, or with a public key to each other, and then I get the Bitcoin from you. Okay, simple. Now, if you are looking to exchange your money into Bitcoin from a bank account, then you need to go and use one of these exchanges. And that's something like actually PayPal and Venmo, just and Cash App, which is that's Square is the company behind that. They do a lot of the transactions at restaurants, things like that. They got into this game of allowing you to change your money into Bitcoin and a couple other cryptocurrencies. Now, I don't love PayPal and Venmo for reasons I won't get into, but they're doing that now, so it's really helping it become legitimate. Coinbase is a company, they went public. Oh, I can't remember whether it was this. Oh, yeah, I guess it was this year. And they're one of the kind of older cryptocurrency exchanges. They're the one that I've used. They're based out of San Francisco. Kraken is another kind of big US-based cryptocurrency exchange. Binance is an Asian one. It's one of the biggest ones. They probably have the most cryptocurrencies available. But if you wanted to kind of stay in the US, then you'd want to use something like Coinbase or Kraken, link up your bank account to it, send in a bunch of dollars, and they'll change that into cryptocurrency for you. Now, in theory, there are businesses that accept Bitcoin. Your local vape shop may accept Bitcoin. It's tricky, though. I mean, if you think about it, and you're a business owner and you decide you want to accept Bitcoin, you have to be willing to accept the fact that that Bitcoin that you accepted one day might be worth a lot less a week from now, or 2 weeks from now, or a month from now. Could be worth more, but it could be worth less. So, without that stability, we're not seeing a ton of businesses offering these types of purchases. That's just too risky. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin mining later, but Bitcoin mining is the way that new Bitcoin is created. And then there are cash stations out there that will let you that will let you get Bitcoin, and you will need a wallet for those as well. So there are a lot of options for Bitcoin wallets. In theory, you can use the exchange as a wallet. So you could purchase your Bitcoin on something like Coinbase. And then if you ever want to make a transaction with it, or if you're just holding on to it, then that will just continue to link back to the blockchain for you. It's easy to do. Some people find it a little bit, they don't like the idea of their wallet being hosted online because they're worried about hacking and things like that. So those people would probably prefer to use a software wallet, in which case you get your Bitcoin on one of these online exchanges, and then you transfer it to your software wallet. And I've got a few of them there: Electrum, Blockchain Wallet, Exodus. These will be on your phone. These will be on your computer. To get into it, you need to put in a password. You do need to be careful that they give you instructions for getting your Bitcoin back should you ever lose your device, or should you ever get locked out, things like that. And you want to make sure. I've had clients with horror stories where they've lost their Android phone, for example. It's really hard to get it back if you've lost your Android phone, because of the way they use security, unless you print out the stuff that they tell you in order to, to learn how to get it back. One other option that a lot of people who are like more serious Bitcoin people use is a hardware wallet. In this case, you get a little, basically like a thumb drive. And when you want to access your Bitcoin, you plug it into your computer, you put in your password, and that will link back to the blockchain. And when you're done using it, you pull it out, and it's not tied to the internet at all. So people who are very worried about security with their cryptocurrency will use a hardware wallet in order to make it a little safer. There's a paper option as well, which basically just prints out the code that takes you back, the key that takes you back to the blockchain. And nobody really does it for the most part, these paper ones, but in theory, but there are sites to do it. Give the grandkids some Bitcoin, and you can give them a piece of paper with that on it. So public key is the long group of letters and numbers that you show to someone else in order to do a Bitcoin transfer. And then you've got a private key, which generally you don't see very often, and that links back to the blockchain itself. That's something that nobody should ever come in contact with, just the public key when you're looking to do a transaction. So I just clicked on a website that will show me all of the transactions. Earlier I said that it's all public as far as transactions that are happening. Woo, somebody just sent someone over $1 million. Let's see if I can take a look at that, worth of Bitcoin, 35 Bitcoin. So we can see this transaction. This key sent this amount of Bitcoin, and it looks like there are a couple other places where it was sent. One of these might be a fee. I'm not sure what this other one is. So, this is that public transaction. This is, we can see that this person sent these 3 people amount of Bitcoin, all public out there. This is their, once again, their key as far as their wallet. You can see that they did multiple transactions. They did another with that same wallet. So this was the one where they sent 35 Bitcoin. They sent a bigger one, looks like earlier, what is that, today, to all of these places of 45 Bitcoin. So, once again, I don't know who this person is, other than seeing their public key, which doesn't really identify anything as far as who they are, but it makes the transaction public. And then once again, this is what it looks like. And a lot of people, in order to do these transactions, they'll do what's called the QR code, where you just take a picture of that code, and rather than typing the whole letters and numbers in order to do it. Now, officially, a Bitcoin is made up of 1 million bits, or 100 million Satoshis. Yeah, a lot of people don't use these terms. Usually you just say, oh, send me 0.00376829 Bitcoin, or whatever, $10 a Bitcoin is worth. And then we have the caverns of death. It used to be a roller coaster, but it's way too steep now. Bitcoin, where a couple years ago it was exciting when it hit $20,000 per Bitcoin. Then earlier this year it was even more exciting when it made it up to $60,000 per Bitcoin. And now it's back down to 33, right around 33. So what is the deal with the price? What's going on with the price? A lot of potential stuff makes this price so unstable. First of all, it is important to note that in the case of Bitcoin, there is a limited supply of Bitcoin. In 100 years, all the Bitcoin will be dug out of the virtual ground. It's the metaphor is kind of like gold. There's a limited supply of this Bitcoin gold in the ground, and once it's out, it's out. There is no more to be created. It's not the case with every cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, they did come up with a limited supply. Now, how useful is it? This is kind of one of those things where you're seeing the next point. You're seeing a lot of businesses and investors kind of wading in a little bit, or putting their toes in. So you're seeing some investment banks doing it. Like I said, you're seeing PayPal stepping in and potentially doing it. You see companies like Tesla saying, oh, we'll accept it, and changing their mind, or Sotheby's doing it. So you see certain kind of businesses stepping in and using it in a certain way. How useful is it? That is one of these things where, because people aren't necessarily buying and spending it, it's hard to say. Now there are other uses for it, which I'm getting to next in this list, but that's kind of one of these things we need to explore, which is whether people are actually using it in what ways people are using it. Now, one of the ways that people are using it is just another investment vehicle. So, as inflation rates were going down and down, and people weren't able to put their money in or didn't want to put their money in bonds or put their money in bank accounts because interest rates are so low, you want something besides stocks. Good amount of people potentially looking at something like cryptocurrency, and investment banks are starting to offer it as part of portfolios as well. So, it is just another place to potentially stick your money to earn money, or like any of these other investment places, it's potentially a way to lose money as well. But once again, the gold metaphor of when inflation goes a certain way, gold gets more expensive or gold gets less expensive, maybe kind of applies to the way that you can stick it in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Certainly, a lot of the interest that's out there comes from the media covering it, the social media. There was a big kind of tank. It tanked a couple of months ago, right after Elon Musk said, well, Tesla's not investing in it. I don't like it for various reasons. Or a couple of weeks ago, there was a big one. Jim Cramer went out there and said, I'm selling all my Bitcoin. I don't believe in it. And the price went down. So, it is kind of a little bit kind of discomforting that these people are out there tweeting it, and with a tweet, the price can go up $5,000 in a day or go down $5,000 in a day. Now, another thing we see affecting, and this was just in the news this week, which was what they're saying was one of the reasons why it was going down, is the way that the government is handling it, which is, for the most part, been pretty hands off. And I'll talk about that a little later. And there are some people who would really like to have a lot more government regulation of cryptocurrencies because it kind of legitimizes them. On the other hand, there are some people who see it as, like, this original group see it as a way around kind of mainstream finances that would like it to stay unregulated. So there is this back and forth. But Elizabeth Warren just this week wrote a letter saying that it needs to be regulated more, that it's just too risky right now. China was a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that sent the price tanking was China was they had banned cryptocurrency and they had banned cryptocurrency mining, and they said that a couple of weeks ago, they said, we're going to enforce this, and that sent the price down. So, whatever the government comes out and says it, it's a little bit of the Wild West still as far as how the government treats it. Other cryptocurrencies, sometimes water raises all ships. Sometimes people move out of one cryptocurrency into another one. I mean, Dogecoin going up when people don't like Bitcoin, things like that. So, Bitcoin, one of the reasons why Bitcoin kind of remains so popular is remains kind of the mainstream way to get into other cryptocurrencies. So there's a lot of back and forth happening there. You do need to have cryptocurrencies to buy a lot of the other cryptocurrencies. And then certainly there is a lot of fear of missing out, maybe we're in a bubble, or maybe the bubble's got to grow a lot bigger. I don't know. And you want to appeal to millennials. A lot of people see it as the future millennial and Generation Z way of spending money because they're all attached to their phones. Maybe they don't understand gold anymore as kind of the safe place, and it's the new version of gold as far as another place to put your funds. So a little bit of the timeline of the history of crypto. It was created in January 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't actually know who this person or group of people are who put that software out there. People have tried to out them. Some people claim to be part of it. But the reality is we don't know. It's just kind of strange, but it all goes back to that privacy behind it. There's somebody or some group of people in a basement put this out there, and now look at it. Look at it go. Now, for the first year or so, it was all about kind of mining for Bitcoin and giving it to other people. The first exchange to come outside of that main kind of core Bitcoin functionality came around in 2010. Bitcoin market. It's not around anymore, but that was the first attempt to kind of make it so that you could change your cash, your fiat cash, into Bitcoin. First purchase, I believe this was Papa John's. Oh, I'm getting hungry. I just realized I didn't have dinner. I'm getting hungry for, look, anyway, you know. So 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. 10,000 Bitcoin for these 2 pizzas. And I don't know if they held on to them at that Papa John's or what, but at the time people bought these pizzas, it was under a penny per Bitcoin. And then just within a week, the value of a Bitcoin went to 8 cents for 1 Bitcoin. Bitcoin hit $1 in 2011. 1 Bitcoin equals $1. Now, Silk Road was the first place where Bitcoin was really in the news. This was a website dedicated to illegal goods, you know, weapons and drugs, things like that. You want to buy this stuff, you're probably not going to pull out your American Express in order to do it. You need a private way to do it. And so people use Bitcoin in order to buy this stuff. Private way of doing it, so you can see the appeal, but that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin was kind of associated with drug dealers and weapons dealers at the beginning. This was shut down eventually. They busted the guys behind it for money laundering. Now, the next time Bitcoin was really in the news was with an exchange called Mt. Gox, Japanese based, run by like a 22-year-old who turns out didn't know what he was doing, and it was handling over 60% of all Bitcoin transactions at the time, and it was hacked, and 850,000 Bitcoin were stolen. Once again, you know, earlier I'd said this Bitcoin is very safe and pretty much unhackable, but these exchanges operate as the same rules as any other website. If you know, password security, and there may be other places, weak spots where people can hack them. And so the value at the time of the Bitcoin that was stolen was 450 million. Now it would be billions of dollars, and there are various lawsuits that have gone on with that. And part of the issue with settling these lawsuits is determining the value of how much you pay people based on, you know, what point, as far as what the Bitcoin was worth. Was it worth, you know, do you pay out based on when it was hacked, or when they what the value of Bitcoin is now? Now, 2017, a bunch of people wanted to solve some of the problems they see, namely these ones around speed and the fees related to Bitcoin. And they came out with this, what's called a hard fork, where they came out with another kind of solution that changed some stuff in Bitcoin. And you had a choice of going to Bitcoin Cash or staying with Bitcoin. Turns out the smart thing would have been to stay with Bitcoin itself. But that was kind of, they pushed out software. Whoever wanted to go the direction of Bitcoin Cash, download that software and go that direction. Value of Bitcoin was $20,000 on December 17th, and that lasted about a day. And then it didn't hit anything close to that for a few years. This was in the news last year, where there was a Twitter hack where official accounts said, go to this address and send Bitcoin. And Bitcoin itself wasn't hacked. The exchanges weren't hacked. Instead, somebody was asking you to send Bitcoin. And you know, the problem being, once again, it's an irreversible transaction. It's a private transaction. You click on this, send this person Bitcoin, you can't get it back. They ended up catching the guy behind this, but it was because they caught him through Twitter itself, not through Bitcoin or through the exchanges. Bitcoin, the value hit 30,000 just this year for the first time. It hit January, it hit 30,000 for the first year. It was January 2nd that it hit it. 2 months later, the value of Bitcoin hit 60,000 and was kind of sitting around 60,000 for a while, back to whatever it is right now, $33,138.84. So just within a couple months, I bought mine probably at $8,000 or $9,000. I didn't buy a ton, so I'm not, you know, sitting pretty right now. But it just goes to show you, maybe it'll be 60,000 in a couple months. Who knows? This is what I was talking about as far as kind of social media, just making it go up or going down. It was close to $60,000. Elon Musk says that Tesla's not going to accept it, and it tanks, goes down from 54,000 to below 50. And then he says in a tweet something that suggests that Tesla's actually selling the Bitcoin that they own, and it goes down. Says that they haven't sold it, it goes up. So, you know, Elon Musk and other people just kind of who are influencers tweeting, it's pretty frightening that one person can go and say something or put a hashtag Dogecoin, and maybe the value of Dogecoin goes up. So, you know, one person can say these things, and all of a sudden this entire cryptocurrency market just bottoms out or goes up. So the technology behind Bitcoin is one of these. It's one of these things that people consider. It used to be, I think, considered one of the most important parts about cryptocurrency. Arguably now, cryptocurrency itself is a pretty important part of cryptocurrency. But the blockchain technology is what was created with Bitcoin. And most cryptocurrencies are using blockchain. And you may have heard about it. It used to be that you would open the business section of your newspaper and there were 5 articles about blockchain every day. I don't see them as much, but really most companies, most major companies were looking at some type of blockchain solution or blockchain product, something out there. So a lot of companies have looked at it or are looking at it and are potentially offering versions of its products. And I'll talk about it in a second. But in general, the blockchain technology is, like I say here, it's a shared real-time decentralized ledger of transactions, not necessarily financial transactions. I'll talk about that more in a second. They could involve cryptocurrency. Blockchain could involve cryptocurrency going back and forth. It doesn't have to. It could be any type of transaction. And this ledger, I keep talking about the ledger, it's shared. It's on computers all over the place. So the Bitcoin ledger, Bitcoin blockchain, you can get it if you want, put it on your computer. It's real time. As soon as transactions happen, it's updated on everybody's computers. It's decentralized. So there's not one company sitting on that computer right now. Or sitting on that blockchain right now. It's all over the place. And once again, the way blockchain works may differ based on other cryptocurrencies, but overall, that's kind of the idea behind it. And because it's all these places, it's essentially unhackable and verifiable. So the way that blockchain works, at least in the case of I'll use Bitcoin specifically, is that there are 10 minutes worth of transactions. So day one that software for Bitcoin was created, there were 10 minutes worth of transactions. Some of that was the creation of new Bitcoin. Some of that may have been people giving Bitcoin to each other. Okay, 10 minutes of transactions, and those are all kind of sitting in a block of 10-minute transactions. Here are the transactions for this 10 minutes. Next 10 minutes happen, some of that, there's some new Bitcoin created, or some of the Bitcoin that was created earlier is passed along between people. It's the next 10 minutes of transactions. And then the next 10 minutes of transactions. Each of these is a block of 10-minute transactions that kind of builds upon the previous transactions. So we have these 10-minute blocks, block upon block upon block, and we have over 10 years of these blocks, forming a chain of these blocks of transactions, a ledger all the way back to day one, okay? Now the 10-minute transactions, the 10 minutes just happens to be what they determined for Bitcoin. It could be different for other blockchains, but the point is it's a block of transactions for X amount of time, and each block refers back to all the previous transactions to bring this ledger back to day one. So like I said, this is something that a lot of businesses are looking at utilizing. The big thing we're seeing in the news now as far as the blockchain, and this came from out of nowhere, are what are called NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. And maybe if you've been kind of had your ear to the ground over the last couple of months, you may have heard about this. So for artworks or music or video or sports, they even have sports videos and sports cards, things like that. The idea behind this is kind of how when you have digital goods that are easy to reproduce, you get a file, just make a copy, give it to somebody else, give it to somebody else, and they're exactly the same, right? Unlike a painting, you get the original painting, you've got the painting, the original Picasso, you got the painting. If you've got a print that Picasso made and signed, 100 prints, those are unique too, but there's 100 of them. So Picasso signed them, said 1 out of 100, 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100. Or maybe you just go to the local print shop and just get a copy of it, which is not unique. They can just print those off. So you have the original, you have other kind of unique versions of it. How do you do that with digital goods? The answer is you tie one version of it to the blockchain, and it says this file is the original. And so if it's a digital video, music, something like that, tied to the blockchain, there's been a lot of money going back and forth between these because it is a way, for people to collect digital goods by showing it's unique. And then if you pass it along to other people, you sell it to somebody else, that gets recorded to the blockchain, and potentially money that's spent gets sent back to the original creator using this cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is involved in all this transaction, all these things tied together. Banks are looking at using the blockchain for large financial transactions overseas and otherwise. You buy a home and potentially you could use a what's called a smart contract, kind of bring all the paperwork that you're used to doing when you buy a house, bring it all as part of the blockchain, record it as part of the blockchain. Anything else that happens around the house, insurance, things like that, or you end up selling it to somebody else, goes inspections, things like that, go back to day one and tracks it on the blockchain. Food goes across the country, trace those bananas to where they came from. Blockchain will trace it. Fashion, make sure that the Versace you're buying is actually what it says it is. Or supply chain, you do products for kitchen supplies, things like that. Track them all the way back to the factory. So a lot of places looking at using blockchain to track all of these transactions. Once again, ledger of transactions that was created with Bitcoin. Bitcoin uses it. So let me talk a little bit about how Bitcoin uses it as part of the mining process, which is how Bitcoin is created. Because like I said, there's a limited supply of Bitcoin. There's 21 million Bitcoins that are going to be pulled from the virtual ground by the year 2140. Once again, created as part of the software. That's just how they decided to do it. Every 10 minutes, there's new Bitcoin created. And we'll talk about how in a second. Now, it started that every 10 minutes, there were 50 new Bitcoin created. Every 4 years, that number's cut in half. So after the first 4 years, every 10 minutes, there was 25 Bitcoin created. And after that 4 years, every 10 minutes, there was 12 and a half Bitcoin created. Now we're at a point where it's every 10 minutes, there's 6.25 Bitcoin created. In 2024, that number will cut in half. Every 4 years, that number will keep getting cut in half until the year 2140, when all 21 million Bitcoins will be available, and that'll be that. As of now, we've pulled out about 17 million of these Bitcoins. So the way that this works is a bunch of computers compete to essentially solve a math problem, a very complex math problem, or what they call proof of work problem. Okay, one of the computers ends up doing it, ends up solving that problem, success. And the way that the kind of math problem is set up, it should take 10 minutes for that computer to solve the problem, for a computer to solve the problem. So every 10 minutes, computer solves it. The computer then has two responsibilities. First of all, it needs to validate that everything that's happened over the last 10 minutes is legitimate. So it needs to look in one person's place on the blockchain, make sure that they actually have the Bitcoin that they said they had, make sure that they didn't try spending it multiple places, things like that, and find the person on the other end, make sure that they exist. So the computer will go ahead and validate 10 minutes worth of transactions. Then the computer needs to stick it in a block. Remember, we just talked about blockchain. Stick it in a block for 10-minute transactions and add that block to the blockchain, which goes all the way back to day one. So the computer that does all this is rewarded with that Bitcoin that I said is created every 10 minutes, which is now 6.25 Bitcoin. So, whatever that is, 6.25 times 30,000. Oh boy, nobody told me there'd be math. Anyway, you can do the math. You get 6.25 worth of Bitcoin for that 10 minutes of work. Plus you get fees. Remember earlier I'd said there were fees for sending Bitcoin. So you get a little bit extra in fees. Nice little reward. One of the questions then becomes, how do I get into mining? Because I certainly wouldn't mind earning all this 6 Bitcoins for 10 minutes of work. And the sad answer is that you haven't really been able to do it for a long, long time because it's so competitive. You would really need a massive server farm. And that's how it is right now, where you've got, if you wanted to get into Bitcoin mining, you really need like a massive warehouse full of computers that are ultra powerful in order to do it. And there are a lot of companies doing it. So that's why some countries have banned it, because actually one of the things that people are starting to be aware of is how bad for the environment Bitcoin mining is. This is one of the things Elon Musk tweeted about, and they're looking at solutions for this. But basically, there's so much computing power that it's very energy intensive. I read that it uses more than 150 countries in the world annually. It's carbon footprint is equal to 1 million transatlantic flights. It uses a huge amount of power to mine for Bitcoin. So that is one of the things that people are a little bit nervous about. It's one of the reasons why some countries have banned Bitcoin mining. It's so energy intensive. That being said, if you wanted to get into it, essentially you could find a company that's doing it, pay them a little bit of money for a subscription, and they reward you with Bitcoin. Yeah, they'll use that to upgrade their computers, and they'll reward you with the Bitcoin that they mine. You're probably not going to be able to do it on your own. Now, if you're looking at investing in cryptocurrency, there are a lot of potential options for you. Certainly, you could buy it as something to day trade or hold it for a week. Right now, Bitcoin's $33,000. You think it's going to go up to 40 or 50, something like that. That's it. You can buy it today, sell it tomorrow, sell it in a week. There will be, once again, through these exchanges, a fee to do that, but maybe you made so much money you don't care. There is at least one mutual fund that invests in Bitcoin. It's pretty expensive. I think the minimum to get into it is pretty high. There are mutual funds for the blockchain technology, if you're interested in that aspect of it. There are a lot of hedge funds available that are out there. I think they're pretty risky and they take a lot of money as well. Now, Bitcoin futures are an option for you. So if you're interested in investing in the future value of some of these cryptocurrencies, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange both offer ways to invest in Bitcoin futures. Now, initial coin offerings, this is what a lot of the, earlier I'd said that there was a lot of cryptocurrencies out there, these tokens that I was showing you earlier. Many of these are initial coin offerings. The idea behind that is just like, if you're launching a company and you've got an IPO, you're selling off little kind of pieces of stock to launch the company. In the case of an ICO, let's say you're offering you're building an online company, so you're something like an online casino, okay? And we're going to call it Mike's Casino. And one of the ways that I'm going to raise money for this online casino is I'm going to offer my own coin called Casino Coin, okay? Mike's Casino, and I now have cryptocurrency, a token called Casino Coin. And what I'll let people do is, before my company is launched, buy in. They can give me X amount of Bitcoin for X amount of Casino Coin. Once my company starts, people can go in and start gambling using my virtual slot machines, things like that, using my Casino Coin. And as my company gets more and more successful, then the value of those cryptocurrencies increases and increases. Maybe people can eventually turn that into Bitcoin or fiat money and make some money off of it. So that's why we see a lot of these kind of coins that are out there. You'll see companies have their prospectus out there as far as crypto and the product that they're going to be offering. And there are probably some good ideas out there. The number I've seen is that about 70% of these either don't end up offering a product or end up being scammed. So it is very risky to do these. But that being said, this is something that companies are doing in order to raise capital for their virtual products before they launch. And maybe there'll be some big ones. Maybe we'll get some specific kind of successful cryptocurrencies or tokens based on these individual online companies. Now, ETFs, they've been trying to get ETFs approved for a while. And the SEC has just said no, keeps saying they're too risky, too dangerous. They don't want mom and dad investing in ETFs based around cryptocurrency, but people keep trying. There are ETFs based around for blockchain companies. And then there's certainly a lot of the investment banks looking at cryptocurrency products. And, they're starting to, once again, for personal kind of wealth portfolios, allowing people to potentially invest in cryptocurrency as part of that portfolio as well, or investing in that for them. There are many countries banning it, China, Iran, probably some others. So, it's hard to ban it. If it's sitting on your phone, if it's an app on your phone, there are probably ways around it. I mean, China's banned a lot of different sites that when I was in China, I was able to access them using a VPN, for example. But it's true that a lot of countries, for whatever reason, see this as a dangerous way around their official currency. Although, once again, some countries are looking at doing their own cryptocurrency. Now, in the US, it's a little bit tricky because the government hasn't really defined very well what cryptocurrency is, and that's one of these things that is really, really tricky, because on one hand, they act as currency, buy and sell stuff with it, whether people are using it or not, buy and sell stuff with it. They act like a commodity. So something like eggs, or gold, something like that, is a product, a real thing. They act in certain ways like that. They also act like a security. So these ICOs, or you're buying pieces of companies, a lot of people have argued, and the Security and Exchange Commission feels this way, that they operate more like stock than they do as currency, because they're kind of little pieces of the company, and they act almost, once again, like an IPO. So there have been various attempts to kind of step up and define what these are, or if they should be their own thing. That's kind of, it's a little bit of a mess as far as how these are regulated. So the Commodities Futures Trading Commission does treat a lot of this as commodities like gold. The SEC regulates the ICOs, regulates the ETFs, which it's rejected until now, regulates the online exchanges. The IRS, as far as they're concerned, these things are taxable. They're capital gains. So you sell some Bitcoin, you are supposed to report your gains or losses, and they're asking for that on 1040s now. The exchanges aren't. Last year they weren't sending any type of form to tell you this stuff, and the government wasn't necessarily working with exchanges, but I suspect that may change. And there's people always ask in this class about capital gains, things like that, and I try to stay away from that because I'm not an accountant. So any of this stuff, please do ask your investment person, ask your accountant for guidance of this stuff moving forward. But yeah, the IRS does treat at least Bitcoin as capital gains. So there are a lot of big challenges with this stuff moving forward. If it's not being spent, how do you get people to spend it? Is that important that we're getting people to spend it? Because once again, it serves other functions as well. Some of the cryptocurrency that's out there have dealt with stuff like the transaction speed and the cost of the transactions in different ways in Bitcoin, but certainly in the case of Bitcoin, this continues to be a potential issue based on various factors. The volatility, how do you accept places, how do you get places to accept cryptocurrency if the value is going to be totally different a week or a month from now and you have no idea? We don't know the future of regulation. And as I was saying earlier, it may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing, depending on how the US regulates. I do think that, maybe it would be less volatile if the US was to step in and regulate it more. But once again, a lot of the kind of real evangelists of cryptocurrency, who aren't the big banks, who probably want more regulation, but individuals, they might not like that as much. So we'll have to see what that means as far as future cryptocurrency, especially if at some point the government comes out with their version of cryptocurrency that is almost a competitor. The energy usage is a huge issue. Not as big an issue with other cryptocurrencies, because they use different ways to mine for new cryptocurrency. But at least in the case of Bitcoin, it's a huge issue. Now, just like any software-based technology, you need to have passwords, you need to have security on your phone and your computer, and not have save the ways that they give you to recover your Bitcoin if you lose it. If you get something, a key tracker on your computer, people can potentially steal a password, things like that. So there are these issues out there, just like anything that's technology based. You do want to be careful. And then, as I started out this class saying that I do see a lot of kind of value in cryptocurrency. I see a lot of potential. I could see it going to various places. Whether that means that Bitcoin is the survivor and Bitcoin is the one that everyone ends up using, or at some point people just see that Bitcoin has too many weaknesses and they move to other cryptocurrencies. Maybe there's a whole lot of them, like with very specific uses, these tokens for, like I was saying, like casino or things like that. Or maybe there's a couple big ones, and maybe that's Bitcoin, maybe it's Ether. Hard to say. I don't know what the future of this is going to be like, or else I'd probably end up making a lot of money on this, which I'm not going to. But that's kind of how I see the world right now, is as far as cryptocurrency, is that it's got a pretty good future ahead of it. I don't know that necessarily means Bitcoin or Ether or any of these other ones that are out there. I don't know what that landscape will be, because they're all going to be kind of fighting it out in a certain way for usage. And the future one, somebody else could step in, and all of a sudden that becomes a big cryptocurrency. Hard to say. Here's some resources for you if you want to look into some more of this stuff. Coinbase is that exchange I was telling you about, which is really the biggest, most legitimate exchange in the US. And they have a lot of information about Bitcoin as well. Blockchain.info has a lot of the live transactions I was showing you, and some other information about cryptocurrency. Investopedia is a great site for investing in general, and they'll give you the basics on investing in Bitcoin and how it works, and Ether and some of the big ones. CoinDesk has all kinds of articles. BlockGeeks has classes and some of the basics about using these. Bitcoin Core is the organization that kind of discusses the technology behind Bitcoin and how it functions. And then as far as news sites, Cointelegraph is my favorite one, I think. And that's where you can kind of keep up on not just Bitcoin, but any of the other cryptocurrencies if you're interested in kind of going the more obscure routes. And Crypto News is another decent one that's out there for you. So that's all I've got for you. I hope looks like I'm going to wait here a little bit and see if there are any questions coming in. And other than that, I just appreciate you having me, and hope that sheds some light. It made it darker, at least, as far as how this stuff functions, why you might want to do it, and what the future maybe will look like. But I'm going to sit here for a little bit and check what kind of questions are coming in.
Hi there, Mike. So yes, we don't have any questions here at this moment, but I'll go ahead and direct any over to you if we do end up getting them. They can send in emails or a chat or whatever it is, and I'll get them to you, and we'll see if we can get some answers. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm a little boggled. That was a lot to process. I'm a math person, and I'm confused by the blockchain.
And once again, the blockchain, I don't know how much more of this you can handle. The best way to think about the blockchain is just tracking transactions all the way back to day one. And they just break it down into blocks. So, bunch of transactions, 10 minutes worth of blocks, and then the next 10 minutes worth of transactions, next 10 minutes worth of transactions, whether they're financial or goods or anything like that. Just tracking transactions, 10 minutes, in the case of Bitcoin, 10 minutes worth of transactions. But certainly, and also if anybody would like a copy of the slideshow, I'm happy to send it to them.
Wonderful, okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. So for those of you still here, if this was a lot to process for you as well and you're not quite ready for all this, we do have yoga happening right now here on Zoom. And then if you're not ready for any of this, we also have Developing Sound Financial Skills on Wednesday at 6 p.m. So we'll have that available here online or here in the library if you'd like to join us. There's still a couple of bugs here trying to get everything sorted out, but we've got the audio, so you're more than welcome to stop by. That's it for today. Thank you.